Hello, I'm Jen Long. You are listening to Talk the Line. This is the podcast where I talk to a musician about something they are deeply passionate about, their little hidden secret obsession. We upload a new episode every Friday. You can check out all our previous episodes at talktheline.blog, from Emily from the Staves talking about adult obsession with fantasy fiction, right through to Glyn Fussell, founder of Sync the Pink, talking about his love of birds. You can follow us on social media at Talk the Line. I think we're on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me at Jen Long. If you like this podcast, do us a favour and subscribe. It makes us look dead popular, so one day I'll be able to make my riches from this weekly hobby. Alexis Taylor is the co-founder of the legendary Hot Chip, a band he formed at school with his friend Joe Goddard. Hot Chip have achieved incredible success with Grammy and Mercury nominations, as well as 6 incredible albums. Alexis has also released 2 albums with his side project About Group, and another 3 as a solo artist. His 4th, Beautiful Thing, drops this month. It's the first time Alexis has made a solo album with a producer, none other than Tim Goldsworthy, the co-founder of Mo Wax and DFA Recordings, and member of UNKLE. There is a strong visual element across his career with an immaculate attention to detail, and today we're talking about a designer who Alexis is obsessed with, Finnish-born Vuokko Nurmesniemi, the creator of Marimekko's iconic Jokapoika shirt. We recorded this at the diner in East London. It was quite a rowdy evening, so sorry if we're shouting a little bit at times. It was also when spring was freezing cold, not like the heat wave which is happening at this moment of recording. Enjoy. Yeah, generally when we do these, the topics are a little bit broader, but I'm really enjoying this one, as I'd never heard, and also I feel like I'm going to mispronounce her name several times during this podcast. Could you start me off by...
Yeah, we're talking about a Finnish designer called Vuokko Nurmesniemi.
Vuokko Nurmesniemi.
Vuokko Nurmesniemi.
Nurmesniemi.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it as the Finns would, but doing my best. Yeah.
And so she kind of rose to fame working for another, not her own company, but for another company that's a famous Swedish... Finnish. My goodness. I'm already getting confused.
So Marimekko is pretty much the most famous Finnish clothing label, and it's one of the biggest Finnish kind of exports. I suppose Nokia was bigger before Nokia became taken over by whoever took it over, Microsoft.
I didn't know Nokia
or
was Finnish.
Yeah, Nokia. So Marimekko began in the 50s, and it's still going now. And it's something that if you ever go to anywhere in Finland, you'll see people wearing it in the street. It's the designs are very eye-catching and iconic. The famous shirt that is unisex, that has been in production since I think mid 50s, is called the Jokapoika, and that's like a stripy shirt that they've always kept it in production, and the stripes on it they look like they're kind of hand painted, so they're not completely straight.
They're like wobbly lines.
Yeah. And that's designed by Vuokko Nurmesniemi when she used to work for them in the mid 50s. You'll literally see it, people walking down the street. Amongst 30 people, you're bound to see 2 of them wearing one of those shirts.
Really?
Like all the time. And if you go to there's a hotel I stayed at once where all of the staff are wearing them, and then if you go to a charity shop, those shirts will be in the charity shops, different versions of them. They're just a big deal in Finland. So Vuokko worked for them, and then when she left that company. She designed lots of other things, lots of other kind of classic clothing for Marimekko, but then when she left, she set up her own label, and she's been running it ever since, and she's, I think, 88 now. There's loads I could say about her. I don't want to just say it all in the first few seconds in case we've just run out of stuff to talk about.
We won't run out of stuff to talk about, definitely not.
So I don't know if you need to ask me questions rather than me just rambling on.
Well, no, ramble away. I guess maybe it's interesting to start with how you discovered her and how you discovered Marimekko and where your kind of your love of Finnish design comes from?
Well, I knew Marimekko clothing because it's available in the UK. Used to be stocked in Scandium, which stocks lots of Scandinavian design things. They used to have their own shop in St. Christopher's Place in town. But when I first went to Finland with my wife, I guess it was probably 2004 or something like that, we just travelled to Finland because we liked both the Moomins and Marimekko.
Really?
So we went to see what it was like there. And then ended up going back every year for the last, however long that is, 10 years or so. Partly because my wife is into collecting lots of Finnish design homewares and clothing and textiles, and partly because we just really liked Helsinki and we really liked Tampere, and the sort of second biggest city there. So we were just travelling there a lot. And I suppose I was vaguely aware of Vuokko through her connection to Marimekko, but then at some point we found a Vuokko shop and went in there and realised, both of us just found the designs really incredible, and it was like another thing. If you're already into Marimekko, and my wife was collecting vintage Marimekko for years as well, this is like another sort of offshoot of that label. So it's another, and I'm the kind of person who does get quite obsessive about things and has collections of things, whether it's musical instruments or particular musical, artists or types of, different things I've collected from car boot sales. Like I get into collecting headphones, or I get into collecting different figures or whatever it might be, but that's kind of in my nature. So with Vuokko, when I discovered that there was this label still running now, and it was so beautiful to my eyes, I just got very into it immediately.
And so with her work at Marimekko, a lot of it was about big, bold prints, right, and overlapping colours when they printed the fabrics. But then, from the sort of limited amount that I've seen on the internet, it looks like she got a little bit wilder when she set up her own company and played around with shape a bit more. Yeah,
the silhouettes of the clothing are brilliant and very kind of oversized pieces. The attention to detail with the printing is really amazing, but also she's quite deliberately limiting in terms of only working with a certain number of shapes throughout her whole career, it seems. I mean, she's probably had phases where she's branched out a bit, but it seems like she basically has 5 or 6 shapes, or maybe 12 shapes or something, and they're always in stock every season, but they're just variants on those in terms of the textiles or the printing, the fabric. I quite like the fact that she can make a whole career that's lasted since the early 60s to now, without having to kind of follow trends or decide, well, now I'm going to do something in denim, or now I'm going to, she's just doing her own thing.
I suppose that's a testament to good design, as something that can last that span of time without having to change with the trends and with the fashions. But
she's also impressive to me because she's not really on the internet. It's not stocked in many other places other than in her one Helsinki shop. She used to have 3 stores in Finland, so there would be one in 3 different cities, and I think in maybe the 70s or the 80s you could buy it in Sweden. At some point you could buy it in Japan. But when I discovered her, I'm the kind of person who wants to know, like, where can I find more of this, or where can I see what the next collection is going to be. And you realise very quickly from speaking to the staff that Vuokko just doesn't operate in that way. So you can't find much about it online. There's no website. It's not stocked anywhere else. There's not an Instagram account. There's not a Facebook.
There's no website?
There's literally no website. The nearest you get to that is a business card in the shop with an email address that you can write to. And you can't sign up to, like, see the lookbook. They will just, if they feel like it, they'll tell you that something's coming. but they don't really self-advertise and market what they're doing, and that seems quite unusual in this day and age.
Yeah.
And yet it's actually working. People are aware of it, and I think it's quite a Finnish thing too. I think Finns are quite proud of their culture, and they're maybe quite private. So I don't think it's unusual perhaps to not be selling yourself to everybody or shoving your ideas down people's throats. I think they're quietly proud of what they do and maybe expect people to come towards that eventually. And that's quite refreshing, I think.
Yeah, that sounds like almost like a marketing technique in itself, to be so off the beaten track that people have to go and find you and are kind of intrigued to do so.
And I obviously admit that at some point they were bigger, they were more well known.
Have you ever emailed them?
I've emailed, and you do get a response sometimes, but that's not to sound critical of their replying system. It's more that I quickly realised that I guess they're just not pushing themselves to be more well known. Maybe it's practical. Maybe they don't have the funding to do that. But I find it just really, really nice that it's quite revered in Finland, but you wouldn't necessarily know about it elsewhere. She's seen as a bit of a kind of influence on Issey Miyake. He's a big fan, and he's talked about her being a kind of god, like a godparent to his design.
I'm not familiar with him.
It's
Sorry.
like a Japanese designer who's way more well known than Vuokko. So she's obviously had an influence on people. But yeah, just not operating in the way that lots of modern companies do. And maybe that's partly because she's been going since she was young, working in Marimekko, which also probably doesn't operate quite like other Western companies do, but that is more of a international company with marketing and an online presence and Instagram and
I think they stock them in John Lewis actually.
Probably do, yeah.
I was reading that they got a bit of they kind of had it didn't go very well for them in maybe like the late 80s.
That's right, yeah.
And then they had the company was bought by someone else, and then their breakthrough was when Carrie Bradshaw bought their bikini on Sex and the City season 2.
That may be true, yeah.
Apparently she wore a Marimekko bikini and then later in the season a dress.
Right.
And then they introduced their like homeware via season 5. I think she had like a tablecloth or something. That's from Wikipedia though, so
I think that it was quite big in America in the 60s and 70s, Marimekko, and it was stocked in department stores there, and it's got quite a kind of rich history of being a well-known classic company before it had this sort of late 80s period where it was struggling. I guess that's still pretty impressive if you've been going from the 50s.
Especially coming from a country like Finland, I guess, where it doesn't feel like it's as on the kind of beaten track as maybe like, your fashion weeks. You get London, you get Milan, you get Paris, you get New York, but I've never heard anyone talk about like Finland Fashion Week.
Yeah, that's true.
Or Helsinki Fashion Week. Is there one? There probably is.
I don't know. I mean, there must be. I don't know if there is a fashion week, but fashion is still a big deal there.
Yeah.
Whether or not it reaches out internationally as much as some other Scandinavian places might do.
The clothes, the Marimekko clothes from that 60s era, they do sort of embody that idea of the swinging 60s. Like, when you think of that scene in Austin Powers where like everyone's walking down Carnaby Street, to me those clothes look like they could have been on those dancers in that scene.
Yeah, some of the women's clothing definitely fits with that aesthetic, but then they're also quite a lot of the designs are a bit more boxy in shape and less sort of classically feminine and sometimes oversized and also quite unisex as well. So they've done lots of different things that mean they are known for what you're describing, but they're also kind of a bit more sculptural in shape, and maybe quite refreshing to see a label that designs predominantly for women, but isn't in that kind of classic kind of slim sort of shape that we're kind of used to being sold to women.
That was set up by a woman as well.
Yeah.
In the 1950s?
Maybe even late 40s. I'm not sure exactly when Marimekko began.
That sounds
early
quite
50s.
Progressive, doesn't it? To have this like company that's sort of owning fashion in an entire country, and it was set up by a woman in the 50s. And, and then her two biggest designers are also female. Yeah.
I think, as far as I know, there are more female designers there than otherwise. I don't know right now if that's still the case, but it seems to be. And they also worked with a Japanese designer for a long time, and that was quite interesting to see. I think he's called Fujiwo Ishimoto, and he was a big fan of what they were doing and wanted to work for them. And there's quite a strong link, I feel, when I go to Finland between Japan and Finland. I've always felt in both of those countries, the places I've visited have had this kind of unique identity where the people who are from those places are quite culturally different from people from elsewhere, but proud of their own cultures and quite independent from other parts of the world. And it's not that Finland and Japan themselves are similar, but they're similar in their the way that they're kind of slightly cut off from other cultures and quite kind of proud of that. And then when you see that there's a Japanese designer working for the Finnish brand and not working for a Japanese brand, that's quite interesting in its own right, I think.
Yeah, I've always felt that way between Wales and Canada.
Yeah.
Where it's always felt like being in Wales, people just thought of you as the bit that was like stuck on the side of England.
Yeah.
And I felt like a lot of Canadians felt the same way, where it was like, oh, it's just sort of American. You're American though, and it's like, no, Canadian. You're like, no, not English, Welsh. I don't know. Maybe that's a similar.
Yeah, very, very. I suppose if you are in that kind of potentially separate or peripheral sort of location, then you might need to feel strongly about your own identity rather than being sort of sidelined by bigger.
I guess develop
countries.
Your own if you've not got as much trade coming in or coming through, or perhaps you're like culturally there's not as much access to other areas. I don't know. Maybe it is just something about being slightly isolated, because Finland is quite removed from the rest of the Sweden, Norway, Denmark area. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't been there at all.
Yeah.
But I always hear stories about you have to take like all these ferries, and like it's crazy cold, and
you can fly there easily from the UK, and it's not that far from other parts of Scandinavia, but there are parts of it that are remote and that require bit more effort transport-wise.
That is a cross through that theory.
I think that the reason that I was asked to sort of think about a subject for this podcast is to do with obsession. Is that right, or something that you're kind of and
something that you're passionate about?
I wanted to sort of explain that. My wife and I became so interested in Vuokko's design and sort of visiting that shop and buying things secondhand and looking for them when we were in Finland, that at one point we went into her store and she herself was actually working in there, which was quite a kind of amazing thing, because she probably would have been maybe 83 or something at the time, and we were quite starstruck to see her. She's an amazing sort of looking woman, and she's very stylish looking.
Very stylish, I saw some photos and thought, she's cool. She's got really good glasses, really nice like hair. She doesn't look like she's in her like late 80s at all.
And she's kind of kept that glasses shape for years as well. And we were just taken aback that she was actually manning the shop. And we were asking, how come you're in here today? She was like, oh well, the lady who usually runs it, she was just working too hard and I needed to give her a bit of time off. So I thought that was really amazing, and we chatted to her, and it was quite kind of a nice moment. And then a few years later, because we've seen articles about where she lives in Helsinki. In Apartamento magazine did a good feature on her home, which was designed by her late husband Antti Nurmesniemi, who was another famous Finnish designer, and I believe he actually designed it's sort of his own architecture design for that home that they lived in and that she now lives in on her own. And I would read every now and again, try and find more articles about that home, because it just seemed like a really interesting building.
Yeah.
And at some point I just googled Vuokko Nurmesniemi house, and it just came up on Google Maps. And then we went on this strange sort of pilgrimage to...
You went round her house?
Didn't go into her house, but we just thought...
Did you knock?
No, we just went to the...
You just lurk outside in the woods, in the bushes.
Well, that's what I realised was pretty strange. So we got the idea in our head that we could go and have a look from outside.
Yeah.
And we took the train, and it's not really that remote. It's kind of easy to get to. I couldn't really believe that Google Maps just told me where it was.
Yeah.
So we set off there,
unnerving.
and then when we started walking nearby, we got excited. Oh, that looks like it. It looks like from the photographs. And then we just were like, well, what are we doing? What do you do next? Like, we're not going to go and knock at the door. She's like a lady in her mid-80s who deserves her privacy and doesn't want some strangers knocking at the door. So we just got that near and then just sort of lurked around for a bit and then thought, this is too bizarre, we have to go away. And it reminded me of some friends of mine who told me a story about they broke into Morrissey's house, not into the house itself, but like into the kind of grounds in LA. And then once they got in, they were like, what the hell are we doing? Like, what do we do next? We've got this far, but we didn't think about the next stage of our mission. And they were obviously quite excited that they'd managed to get in, but then they were like, well, we're not actually going to go and knock at the door, so they just kind of ran away. We didn't go that far, and I hope we don't sound too creepy. We were trying to look at this beautiful architecture of the building, but it was odd to just realise the obsession led us that far, and then we just decided to turn around and go away again.
I did see some pictures of it online, and it did look pretty special. So it's like a 4-story, almost like a warehouse kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's all open, so that the only
open.
walls are like, I mean, I'm presuming bathroom. It didn't mention that, but I'm presuming there's walls around the bathroom and the bedroom. They're the only kind of cut off parts. And then there's a swimming pool level somewhere, apparently.
Right, yeah, maybe.
I haven't seen any photos of that.
No.
And then, it's all kind of open plan, wooden floors, big glass window. I mean, it just looks gorgeous, doesn't it? It looks
and very, very unique, and filled with hers and her husband's designs as well. So her fabrics, but his, furniture. It's just quite nice to see a home that is. If you work in those fields, it makes sense that you would fill it with your own items, but it just looks really beautiful.
So many cushions, so many piles of cushions, and apparently underfloor heating as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
What a dream! Your new video has like was that your house in the new video with the eyes?
No, that is my friend Mark Pawson's flat.
It's a very nice flat.
Yeah, I suggested that location because I knew it would. Well, the director wanted a flat rather than a house, and I knew that Mark Pawson is a British artist who makes his own books, prints everything himself, makes his own badges, and kind of teaches people how to do that as well. And he's a collector, so his whole flat is full of different things he's collected for his whole life, from Kinder Egg toys and the Kinder Egg cases, the little kind of eggshells, through to open and close signs, through to Japanese toys, to different things he's obsessed with. So I kind of thought that not that you can see much of that in the video, but just the colour schemes and the way he's laid it out, it looks nice.
I don't know, for a second I thought it might have been yours, because it does look like it's been really nicely designed, and it does, I do like all those colours. I did kind of pause the video just to have a little nose around his flat, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, well, it's a great sort of archive of everything he's interested in, and really it's really well organised as well. He knows where everything is, and can pull out a a book that he's made to just, if you mention something that he's made, he knows where everything is, and he's always working on something new and screen printing things and making new posters and sort of self-generating work, basically.
How do you think your obsession with Vuokko has kind of influenced your home, your house? Do you kind of take any of those influences from her patterns and designs and staring at her house on the internet?
In a very literal sense, the house is full of Vuokko. I've got a collection of her jumpsuits, so I started buying them to wear on stage with Hot Chip and About Group, and I often wear them. So I've got quite a lot of the jumpsuits, and they're just block colours, or they're like 2 colours, and they're really bold designs, really simple. So some of those are kind of hanging throughout the house, and then my wife has got lots of her dresses as well, and then we've got lots of Marimekko fabric throughout the house. Not specifically loads of Vuokko things. I mean, I have like a couple of Vuokko mugs and some books and things.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of literal, sort of straightforward way in which there's an influence, in that we've got loads of it everywhere, and the colours are quite striking. Beyond that, we've got this nice Finnish designed sofa by Artek. Artek is another big Finnish brand. That's the kind of thing you'd probably see in a lot of Finnish homes. I should point out neither of us are Finnish. We just like lots of things from there.
Why not?
But yeah, I guess the colour schemes are probably influenced by that kind of design generally. And in the kitchen, my wife has a big collection of cooking pots and coffee pots and different things, some of which are Vuokko and some of which are other Finnish brands. And they do really stand out as quite a collection, but they're also used, they're not just there only for decoration.
Do you know much about her personal life? Do you know much about her outside of her career?
No, I don't know. I mean, I imagine that she must be having to work pretty hard to run that company. There's a factory, but it's a small factory in Helsinki. It must be quite hands-on for her still. I don't think she's got a huge number of staff, so I'm not sure what she would have time to be doing outside of that. But of course, she must have some leisure time.
Yeah.
But there aren't that many interviews in English with her, so I haven't got that much to go on. The Apartamento article was frustratingly short for my liking. Kind of wanted to find out more.
Yeah. It's just people who are that high achieving and that focused and that kind of like. I watched a couple of interviews with her, and she's so like thoughtful in her tone of speech, and the things that she says are quite striking and poignant, and you just feel like she must have some other like mad hobbies.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
She must, those people who are like that talented in one area can generally just do anything.
Yeah.
She's probably like an amazing horse rider or something like that. But she's been like, it's like this. We're not just talking about. She's not just like some lady that's got one shop in Finland. She's been like exhibited in like MoMA, right? There's like some of her works are for show in the Museum of Modern Art in New York.
Yeah, and also in the kind of permanent collection at the Design Museum in Finland, they've got 3 or 4 works of hers, and if there's ever a Marimekko exhibition, it will always feature some of her work. But the way in which I think she's reached a lot of people, I suppose, is just the fact that it is still being worn, it's still being made. Her own stuff is still being made, but the older designs she made for Marimekko will get reproduced and changed over the years in different collections. But also you'll find it is quite collectible second-hand within Finland. If there's ever any Vuokko in a second-hand shop, it's always quite pricey. People know what it is.
Right,
and
yeah.
I get the impression that younger people are discovering it too, because it is quite timeless. So that must be nice for her to see, that it's still got relevance now and currency now. I also think she reminds me a little bit of Dieter Rams, who designed for Braun, the German design company. His kind of policy of, which is completely borrowed by Apple Macintosh, of having the least intrusive design and the design serving the function. That's kind of implicit in Vuokko's designs as well, so that there aren't unnecessary details, there aren't unnecessary kind of extra layers or extra sort of pieces to them. They're very, very simple, and I feel like the fact that she's stuck with that for so long makes her stand out compared to lots of other very busy, overly designed works.
I read some accusations that her outfits and her designs are like not that sexy, because they're quite kind of almost unflattering in that they're so straight cut and everything's quite like no frills.
Yeah, I think that could be how people perceive it. I like that myself, that it's quite bold in that decision to be not so sort of shapely, I suppose. Yeah. And if you stick your neck out and do something like that, then it's not really in or out of fashion, is it? I suppose it's kind of it's not really thinking about trends. It's just it can be worn by anyone. So maybe there's part of the reason for it there.
I also read that she's like a bit of a maverick, or was in the sort of 50s when she was first designing, in that she would do things to like the machines that printed, like stick chewing gum in them so that they could do bigger prints and like block up holes and like fiddle about with the way that thing, like not do what she was told.
Yeah.
Like she was told, just copy this design, and she was quite rebellious, and she was like, no, I'm going to stick these two colours on this one piece of cloth. I'm going to shove my gum up in this printing machine, and I'm going to make something completely different that you've never seen before.
Yeah, I think she did do that, and that led to this kind of the way that the colours bleed into each other in the Marimekko Jokapoikas. So you've if I understand it correctly, you've got three colours because there are two things that are placed sort of on top of each other, so that where they cross over creates a third colour as the two inks kind of overlap. And that's quite inventive in a very simple way, but she still had to kind of come up with that idea.
Is that why the lines are wobbly? Or are they designed to be wobbly and then the colours...
I'm not sure how she achieved that, but it certainly looks like hand-painted.
Yeah.
And it may have been initially. I don't know.
It's like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's just a stripy shirt. And then when you look a little bit closer, you're like, oh, that's actually really clever. It's like something's just a little bit off-kilter, not quite right.
Yeah.
And it takes you a minute. You have to actually...
You have to adjust to it a bit.
Yeah.
From reading about Marimekko's history, I think that they did stick with a lot of their classic designs for a very long time, and they weren't that sure about other designs coming in. So there's another, I'm not sure who designed it for them, but there's another design which is, rather than a vertical striped shirt, which is the Vuokko designed Jokapoika, as it's called, there are these long sleeve t-shirts and short sleeve t-shirts, which are again still in production now, that Comme des Garçons sometimes do collaborations where they do versions of those with Marimekko.
Oh, right.
So they're kind of long-lasting designs. But when they first were created, I think that the owner of Marimekko found them a little bit too sort of simple and was worried that there wasn't enough going on, or maybe that they were just too traditional looking, or there wasn't enough invention, and she had to be persuaded to go with them. And they're another thing that has lasted and is still in production.
Plain t-shirts.
There'll be like a horizontal stripe, but in different colours schemes with a
whole t-shirt striped.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Jeremy Deller always is photographed wearing one of them.
I feel like I don't know who anyone you're talking about is at this point.
Jeremy Deller's one of the really famous kind of young British artists he's older now, but he's quite a kind of important figure in modern British art. But I just noticed he's always wearing those Marimekko t-shirts.
I guess there's always quite a crossover between fashion and art.
Yeah.
And then I think at one point, didn't she? I think she said something in an interview that I was watching about how it can become science. And you get a design so right that you're actually pushing society forward, you're progressing. And in that sense, she saw design, or still probably sees design as a science when it's like so particular. I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it that way. I wonder what she means. What makes it? I guess there's an experimental approach in designing, and maybe seeing if you can work out a way to create something.
Yeah.
A printing technique, or just see if something, the science of seeing if something actually works, is functional or worn by people. I don't know if that's what she means, but
creating a formula for something that's going to be absolutely timeless. Yeah, it's quite impressive. Although she has one dress that's, I think, still worn today, that's got lots of little pockets on it.
Oh yeah, that's one,
quite a.
That's another of her. I don't know the name of that dress, but that is another really big design, particularly in Finland. My daughter has one of those. My wife has one. Lots of people in Finland, you'd see their kids wearing it and adults wearing it. That in itself, I suppose, is quite unusual. That the iconic dress would be worn by different generations.
Yeah.
And I can't think of many other equivalents of that, really.
No, because usually when you get hand-me-downs when you're a kid from like your cousins, they're always just like really random and weird things from C&A.
Yeah.
They're not like cool fashion items that people do podcasts about.
Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, probably some Finns find it not the coolest label. It's so omnipresent that maybe it's a bit like Marks and Spencer or something, and it's not seen as designer, and
or
yet
like when
it's
Americans wear Clarks shoes.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, Clarks is so cool, and you're like, I like argued with my mum so many times about wearing these at school.
I wear Clarks a lot myself, so I'm with the Americans. If that's Jamaicans are really into Clarks.
I mean, it's fine now. It's fine now that I'm not a 14-year-old girl that once wanted a pair of kickers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I completely
No,
took
I
us
remember
off
that.
topic.
I remember at school, the kids' Clarks range was seen as a bit naff.
Yeah.
And kickers were what everyone wanted to wear when I was at school. But now, I mean, we're just like a few meters away from Goodhood shop, which is constantly stocking Clarks, and they're like, design classics now for adults.
Wow. There you go. It's funny how things change. Or maybe we just change.
There's a musician friend of mine who I was at school with called Emma Smith, who's played on loads of Hot Chip records and loads of my own records. And her mum is Finnish, and she was somebody who grew up not wanting to wear Marimekko because it was what your parents choose for you. And she was surprised that Kerry, my wife, was so into it. So it just really depends where you're coming from, and maybe part of our interest is to do with not having grown up with that and looking at it from outside,
Oh yeah, definitely. If something's foreign to you, it's exciting, it's new, it's like, oh, what's this whole world I haven't discovered?
Yeah.
Have you discussed your obsession with many Finns? Do you we go on holiday to the same hotel every year and they're like, oh, look who's back?
Well, I've played at Flow Festival a couple of times in Helsinki, and I've got to know some people over there, and I also have Finnish friends who are based in London. One of them totally gets why we like going there, because she's equally obsessed with Marimekko and is very proud of her Finnish heritage. Other people are a bit more like, why do you come to Finland? Like, what is it that you like about it? Most of us want to get away from Finland, but there's lots about Finland more than just the clothing. The architecture is quite striking, and the feel of Helsinki is really, really nice, and the idea of sauna being part of your daily routine seems to make sense to a lot of people, and the light is quite amazing in parts, in Finland.
So
I think if you're there all of your life, maybe, I don't want to sort of speak out of turn, but I hear people say that the long winter months in darkness are quite grueling, and we're not there all year round, so
No, I mean it's been tough enough here this winter, hasn't
Yeah.
it? This winter/spring, which is
yeah.
actually winter.
And this is nothing compared to being there.
So do you usually go in the summer?
We've been there in winter and in summer, but we've been all times of the year really. Summer is good because it's warmer and there are outdoor flea markets that you can go to, every day, and that's good if you like collecting second-hand Finnish stuff.
Really? Oh my God! You must have to get like extra baggage allowance on the way home.
We have been known to do that, yeah.
What's the best thing that you've ever found in a Finnish flea market?
Well, we found an interesting mother and daughter couple who was selling just a crazy amount of vintage Marimekko and Vuokko. They've almost got like a museum's worth of archive. So it was quite nice talking to them, and they were really interested in our passion for the Vuokko and Marimekko designed stuff. And there's also, I can't think what would be the best thing, but I mean, I've actually started to slow down now in bringing stuff back. I like just looking rather than, I don't really need to actually like amass more.
Yeah.
My wife maybe still feels like she does.
When you go to her shop now, I kind of feel like I want a visual on Vuokko's Helsinki shop. Is it is it big? Is it quite boutique?
It's a small shop. It used to be on the main kind of designer clothing strip in Helsinki, the Esplanade. So it was there for years. Very recently it moved to a slightly, presumably less expensive street to rent. But it used to be on the same street that there were like 2 Marimekko flagship stores, and Nokia was like just behind it, and so the shop now, it's not a big shop. It's probably enough space for maybe, if it was busy, I don't know, 15 customers.
Oh, okay. It's quite small.
It's pretty small, but it looks very striking because of just the range of colours that are hanging there in the window and in the shop. And it's only staffed by one member of staff, so it's easy to kind of get into conversation with people working there, or like find out about what they've been up to or what's coming out next. But they tend to sort of also keep you a little bit, if you are into it and maybe as obsessive as we are, you can sort of see the stuff at the back that isn't on display, and you're slightly teased by the fact that they've got the winter collection, but they won't sell it to you until winter time. But it's just there.
So is it all clothes, or do they sell like homeware bits in there as well? Or?
She stocks the there's a kind of classic coffee pot that her husband Antti Nurmesniemi designed, and that is something again that you see everywhere in charity shops, and very expensively priced, or at the flea markets and in everybody's homes. That's like a design classic. So she'll have one of those in one colour always in the shop available. Other than that, it is only clothing. I don't think she sells any textiles or sheets of fabric or curtains, whereas Marimekko does. Kind of a limited amount of stock, but then the actual prints will change from season to season, and maybe one season you'll see a jacket with a sort of 3-colour, very sort of brightly printed, sort of a little bit like kind of Neapolitan ice cream sort of colour scheme jacket, and then the next season one of the jumpsuits will be in that design.
Right.
So they all kind of swap around.
But the jumpsuits as kind of a staple. Like there's always t-shirts, shirts, jumpsuits.
There's always trousers, which are for women. These dresses that are kind of like, I don't know how to describe them, almost ball-shaped, like large dresses.
That does sound really sexy.
Yeah, jumpsuits, hooded jackets, lighter sort of cotton jackets, and then sometimes like warmer winter versions of the same shapes. So often there'll be a top half and a bottom half that goes together. So you might want both of those items because it kind of looks like a uniform or a suit, and they really complement each other well. They happen to be pretty expensive, so you can't necessarily.
What's the price tag on all these items like?
It's a lot, like.
Right. So it's like couture kind of stuff. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, you might be spending 600 euros or more on a jacket, or you might be spending like more than that maybe on a jumpsuit. So you can't. It's not something that you can just go in and buy a bit of everything.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. It's not H&M.
No. But luckily, some of it comes up secondhand as well.
Yeah.
Still very collectible, but just about affordable that way.
You know, the first thing I do when I get home is put this in eBay.
Yeah. There's not loads of it on eBay. It's still kind of not that big a deal outside of maybe Japan and Finland, I think.
Right. And is there like a rivalry between her and Marimekko?
Well, I sometimes wonder about that myself because she's been separate from them for so long, and yet her own designs are still in stock in Marimekko and still talked about on the Marimekko website. So there's obviously a support for what she's doing, and they're proud of her work. But she must have been competing with them to some extent when she launched her own independent range in the 60s, and they was still going. There's definite crossover in terms of customer interest in both labels. But maybe they're not rivalrous because Vuokko's slightly more niche, or maybe she's just, I don't know. I don't know her personally, but she seems pretty easygoing.
Because I guess if you had your like famous lead designer who just developed you this shirt that was gonna run for generations to come and was bringing you in so much notoriety and cash, and then she was like, "See ya, gonna go set up my own company," I feel like I would be a little bit gutted.
Yeah, but I reckon she probably left on pretty good terms, and it was probably, I mean, I may be painting a more kind of rosy picture of it, but I never get any sense that was like a breakup, but more she'd sort of worked there for 10 years and they were probably quite proud of what she was doing. I think she was probably quite young when she left to set up her own thing as well. And they obviously had other designers, and some of whom have stayed with them for their entire careers, so they're I'm not sure they'd be too stressed by that. It's
kind of mad that no one's written a biography or made some kind of TV show or movie about her. Like, she sounds like she's quite an iconic Finn.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, as far as I know, there isn't anything like that about Marimekko either. I mean, there are books, but not a kind of. There's no film or anything, so she's definitely smaller in scale than that. So maybe it wouldn't really be likely to happen. But I should point out that, you know, I am the kind of person who is drawn to quite niche things or quite cult things, and what I become obsessed about isn't necessarily a big thing, you know, and I have to realise that sometimes. I'm a big fan of Alex Chilton, who used to be in Big Star and the Box Tops, and of all of the things he's done, Big Star is the one that's the most well known, and that's still just a cult band, you know.
Yeah.
And I often make judgments about what I'm doing based on things that I am inspired by, have done, and then I realise, well, those people are pretty weird in their decision making, and so maybe it makes sense that people are confused by what I'm doing, because some of my role models are not exactly mainstream or money making or kind of, you know, doing things in the most obvious way, and they can be quite perverse and contrary.
Right.
So I sometimes have to remind myself of that.
Like, you're almost setting yourself up to go into a niche.
Yeah, but not deliberately. I'm just drawn towards those kind of minds.
Does it not feel a bit frustrating to have like passions that are so niche? Because sometimes the like most exciting thing, the like kind of most rewarding thing about being passionate about something is meeting other people who are similarly passionate, or being able to exercise that passion with a group of friends or with a group of people that you've met through it.
Well, that's definitely true. But I think that it's also sometimes nice to know about something that you're into, but maybe isn't shared with everybody, and maybe there's just a small number of people that take an interest in it. But to come back to Vuokko for a moment, I mean, if I wear that stuff on stage, it's really eye-catching, and people ask what it is, and so it does make an impact or reach a wider audience in a sense. And if my wife wears it just to go out, it's very eye-catching, and people always ask and always comment on it. So it is quite kind of open to people getting into it, but it's not something that is stocked in the UK. It's not easy to find it online. It doesn't have that kind of push, so it means it only ever goes so far in terms of people knowing about it.
So I guess the reward comes because you put the work in advance, and now you get to kind of tell other people about it and turn them onto it.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
That's cool.
A big thanks to Alexis. You can find our show notes and previous episodes at talktheline.blog, covering subjects from mental health to German literature to condiments. Next week, we hit our big 50 episodes, and to celebrate, I'm talking to Andrew WK about partying. You've been listening to Talk the Line. I'm Jen Long. This is a podcast from the line of Best Fit, produced by Paul Bridgewater with original music by Seams. Please follow us on social media, subscribe to this podcast, and I say it always, if you're feeling super generous, please write us a nice review. See you next week for the big 50.